Thanks, Brian, and welcome, class. My name is John Motz. I'm the professor for this particular section of the class, BIB 314 XME 30, which is the class that we are taking online, this section here, through the Merced Satellite Campus. And nice to meet you. If we've had the chance to meet in classes previous to this, nice to see you again. I'll look forward to working through this class with you as we move into this adventure of BIB 314, Jesus in the Christian Community, and do so online. So, as our introduction to this particular class, Brian said in his introduction that this was not merely a traditional Bible study, and it is not. It is more than that, and it is an integral part of the curriculum here at FPU. But for us, specifically for this class, it is a look at the life of Jesus through one of the gospel accounts. The book of Matthew will be our primary place to view through. So we'll be learning some new tools, ways of better interpreting and understanding the Bible for ourselves. It's an important part of this class, as well as an important part of life moving forward. But also, I realize the Bible can be a very intimidating book to begin to study because it is so large, it is so ancient, it is so many things that often put us off and cause us not to want to look too closely at it. But for you to know about this particular class, because we are looking primarily at the life of Jesus and then the community that developed following that, we'll be looking specifically at one book, the Gospel of Matthew, and you can find that in your Bible. It's the very first book of the New Testament. This will be the Bible we will use for the class, this New Oxford Annotated Bible. And on page 1781, we begin with the story of the Gospel of Matthew. And so here we go, the Gospel according to Matthew. Now, before we get too far into that, let me say that because I mentioned it is the first book of the New Testament, clearly for some this may be news, that the Bible that I hold in my hand, the one that you will be reading through, is divided into two main groups. One's called the Old Testament. That's all the material, biblical material that took place historically before the time of Jesus. And then Jesus becomes that dividing line. And so it is his story in the gospel accounts, and there are four of them. As I mentioned, Matthew is the first of the four, but there's also Mark, Luke, and John. And the Gospels focus primarily on the life and the teachings of Jesus, who he was, what he did, what he means for us. And each one has, while they're telling the same story about the life of Jesus, each one has its own particular personality because it is written by a different individual and written for a different initial audience, though we get the chance to see it here today. So we'll be taking a look at Matthew, and Matthew, as he guides us through any gospel really, but Matthew especially, really lends itself to us asking a specific question, a guiding question as we move along. So that guiding question is this: who is Jesus? Not just who is Jesus to you, or who is it that people say Jesus is, but as Matthew is kind of telling his story, he is telling us a story in such a way that he wants us to come to our own conclusions about what he's telling us about this Jesus, so that we too can answer that question for ourselves. So that's helpful for us, especially in Matthew, and as we look at the various parts of Matthew in these first few weeks. Keep that question in mind. Who is Matthew kind of unveiling here in this Jesus character, and what do I make of what he is saying? That becomes a good place for us to begin. It also is going to be a good place for us to conclude this class as we move through to the signature assignment at the end of the course, which is going to come up with a Jesus-like response to certain situations. And so we'll be talking more about that in the weeks ahead. But that's the main idea, getting to know a little bit about who this Jesus is according to Matthew in this first book of the New Testament, and then coming to put that person who responds in various ways in this story, how would that be applied today for us? And so that becomes the heart of your signature assignment, again, rooted back into Matthew's depiction of who Jesus is. So I look forward to getting a chance to know you through the class and, again, through the study of Jesus in the book of Matthew here in BIB 3:14. Welcome, and we'll look forward to having a great week. Okay? Thanks.